according to Time magazine, you now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. This can make studying a pretty hard task. Allow me to introduce my Amazon Web Service application, QuizMe, a solution for simple studying. This application has two parts: a website which displays the questions and answers for the quiz, along with instructions for Alexa, and the second part, the Alexa skill set, which quizzes you on the subject of machine learning. I use the following Amazon Web Services to develop this app: S3, DynamoDB, Amazon Web Service Lambda function, API Gateway, and the Alexa skill set. Let's go through the architecture and talk about how everything works. The first part of QuizMe that I will talk about is the web application, S3. The website is hosted in the S3 buckets. It uses HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery. The site's main page gives a description of how to use the application. The quiz page allows people without Alexa to read and study the question and answers on the subject of machine learning. It can also be used as a supplement to those with Alexa to print out and to refer to. Here is the code for the quiz page, which shows the API call made through API Gateway to retrieve the questions and answers from the database and display them in the HTML table. The next AWS service that I use for QuizMe is DynamoDB. This is used to store the question and answer set for the quiz on machine learning. We can access this information on the website through the API call, which brings me to our next service, API Gateway. This service makes it possible to talk with the database through API calls or requests. I set up a GET request through a Lambda function called getQuizzes, which accesses the database and retrieves the question-answer set for the quiz. I coded this Lambda function using Node.js. The second part of QuizMe that I'll talk about is the Alexa skill. I used two Amazon Web Services to develop this part. First was the interaction model for the Alexa skill set, where I set up intents and slots. An intent represents an action that fulfills a user's request. They can have arguments called slots, and for a given intent, the samples property contains an array of sample utterances. I wrote the interaction model in JSON. The second service I used was Lambda. I wrote the Lambda function in Node.js. This is part of the app that takes the user's input and handles the Alexa responses accordingly. It sets up the questions and answers by pulling randomly from the quiz data set. It takes in the user's input and evaluates if the user was correct or not, and then gives a response followed by another question. There are a total of 10 questions per each game. This app is fully scalable. Lambda, DynamoDB, and S3 all automatically scale to handle changes in load. To use this app, you will need any model of Alexa or a Wi-Fi enabled device. Let's do a demo of the Alexa skill QuizMe.
Welcome to QuizMe. You can ask me to start a quiz when you're ready. Okay, I will ask you 10 questions. Here is your first question. If you train a learning algorithm and get 10% training error and 40% test error, the model is probably? Blast! The answer of if you train a learning algorithm and get 10% training error and 40% test error, the model is probably? Is overfitting. Your current score is 0 out of 1. Here is your second question. True or false? The naive Bayes model assumes that all the features of an example are independent? Oh, Snap! The answer of true or false, the naive Bayes model assumes that all the features of an example are independent, is false. Your current score is 1 out of 2. Here is your 6th question. If you have 10 classes and are doing AVA classification, how many classifiers do you need to train?
45.
Well done. The answer of if you have 10 classes and are doing AVA classification, how many classifiers do you need to train, is 45. Your current score is 4 out of 6. Here is your 10th question. If you have 10 classes and are doing AVA classification, how many classifiers do you need to train? Kaboom! The answer of if you have 10 classes and are doing AVA classification, how many classifiers do you need to train, is 10. Your final score is 6 out of 10. Thank you for studying with QuizMe.
The hardest problem I encountered was developing the Alexa skill set. I had very little knowledge of Node.js before taking this class, so there was a learning curve when coding the Lambda functions. My solution was to watch many tutorials and spend many hours testing and debugging to finally get the Alexa skill set to work correctly. Another problem which I plan to implement in the future was allowing users to take quizzes on multiple subjects, not just machine learning. I attempted this unsuccessfully because getting the question answer sets from DynamoDB to be usable in the Alexa skill set has little documentation. And when I made attempts at solving this, it would introduce bugs, breaking the entire Alexa skill. And ultimately, I ran out of time before finding a solution.